Oak Island is part of a Scottish Rite Freemason plan that predates the founding of the United States. In this video I walk you through two verifiable sets of facts that reveal that Oak Island is Masonic, period, proven beyond all reasonable doubt, and that there is only one place on Oak Island where its creators would encourage others to seek its treasure. All of the maps and details in this video are derived from The Seal of Liberty, America's Quest for the Lost Treasure of Freemasonry, a book by Adam Schneider, your narrator. This short book reveals to the reader in a systematic and rational way the existence of a Masonic map devised for the land of the free before 1713, and then reveals the original purpose and methods of Freemasonry using Freemasonry's own words as translated by the symbols on the map. How does one decipher the clues on Oak Island if one does not know who left them? Context is everything. There does not exist a single piece of concrete evidence that a treasure is buried on Oak Island, not one. Humans are clearly responsible for a deep burial there, but the purpose of that burial remains unknown. Most of the clues left on Oak Island by its original diggers have been steamrolled. For more than 200 years, the treasure seekers' dig first, think second mentality has obliterated the island and masked its intended purpose. Fortunately, one set of clues remain. They are a series of large man-placed stones, often called Nolan's Cross. If a treasure is buried on Oak Island, then there is only one place that it is buried. I'll start by showing you that place and how Masonic symbolism and physical clues lead us there. I'll then tackle the more lengthy proof, the proof that Oak Island is Masonic. We'll start our journey with Nolan's Cross. In 1981, Oak Island resident, longtime treasure hunter, and land surveyor Fred Nolan noticed that several large stones on the island formed a pattern that, to him, resembled a Christian cross. This cross is often called Nolan's Cross. The arrangement of these stones is shown here. The labeled dots are the stones. Their numbers will make more sense in a moment. At the intersection of the two lines of the cross, a large stone was shallowly buried. To Nolan, it appeared to have a face carved into it. I call it the buried stone. Nolan measured the distance from the top stone, labeled here as 1, and the buried face stone to be 145 feet. This measurement is an estimate because the stones were large in size, so finding their exact center point is not possible using visual clues alone. Around 2003, a Norwegian researcher, Petter Amundsen, looking into theories about Rosicrucian involvement in the works of Shakespeare and the origin of Oak Island, noticed that Nolan's cross had too many stones in the wrong dimensions to be a Christian cross. He theorized that the intended shape was a Kabbalah tree of life, which has 10 points on it. These points are called Sephiroth. I devote a chapter of the Seal of Liberty to the Kabbalah's foundational influence on Masonic philosophy. Amundsen's tree of life is 1,152 feet long and 720 feet wide. The ratio between these lengths is 8 by 5, which is an important ratio in religious and occult teachings. For example, the Earth revolves around the Sun 5 times for every 8 times that Venus does. The pentagram is an 8 by 5 shape and resembles the orbit of Venus. The golden ratio is nearly 8 by 5. The supposed Rosicrucian master, Christian Rosencrantz, was entombed in an 8 by 5 foot room. The number 40, commonly found in religious works, equals 8 times 5. Moses spent 40 years in the desert, Noah endured 40 days and 40 nights, Jesus was tempted for 40 days, Osiris was mourned for 40 days, and so on. Even the mysterious cipher stone, allegedly found buried at 90 feet in the money pit, which has long since gone missing, read, quote, 40 feet below. Amundsen concluded that Nolan's measurements were slightly incorrect. He changed the 145-foot length to 147 feet to achieve a pattern. He then traveled to Oak Island and found stones at points 7 and 10, which seemed to confirm his tree of life theory. Fred Nolan did not permit Amundsen to search for stones on Nolan's land, so Amundsen was unable to search for stones at points 5 and 8. Amundsen took GPS measurements for 4 of the stones to confirm his theory. I borrowed Amundsen's tree of life measurements without any adjustments because, to me, a mathematician, they have a mathematical elegance to them that suggests a well-thought-out pattern. As I applied this template, I encountered some phenomenon that indicated that the lines on the tree of life needed to be redrawn to match a Masonic purpose. But when I first adopted Amundsen's tree of life template, Freemasonry was not on my radar as a possible source of the Oak Island mystery. Similarly, Amundsen does not emphasize Freemasonry in his own theory, although he notes its possible connection to Rosicrucianism. As I will detail later, I realized the Scottish Rite Freemasons, no later than 1713, were using Amundsen's Oak Island Tree of Life dimensions as a template for constructing Masonic structures and aligning them with one another to form a single, symbolically coherent map. This map is formed from several Masonic symbols that reveal the purpose and methods of Freemasonry. I'm not talking about the Freemasons that you see today, the ones wearing silly hats and doing charitable deeds. I'm talking about the original founders of Freemasonry, its philosophy, rituals, and secret methods hundreds of years ago. There's a plan behind Freemasonry that justifies the effort put into creating it, and the conspiracy theorists have it all wrong. One possible marker of the Scottish Rite of the 33rd degree in Amundsen's Tree of Life is the number 33 hidden in its dimensions. There are 4 segments that are 147 feet long. 1 and 4 differ by 3, and 4 and 7 differ by 3, so 33 is embedded in 147. The two 282-foot segments can be seen to hold the number 66, or if they are split into 141-foot halves, contain the number 33. In the Scottish Rite map that I mentioned earlier, the number 66 is a fundamental angle. I devote an appendix in the Seal of Liberty to the dozens of occurrences of the number 66, and I offer a possible meaning for this occult number. I conclude that it is the Masonic number for rebirth. The map that I have discovered is formed from variations of one number, 33, and only this one number. It is not a collection of lines from anywhere to anywhere in search of speculative alignments and other such nonsense. One template, my Masonic Tree of Life, which is taken from Amundsen's Tree of Life on Oak Island, and one means of applying it, which can be described simply as follow the light. Nothing could be more Masonic. For reasons that are explained in the Seal of Liberty, I added a 720-foot diameter circle centered at point 6. Also, I annotate an 11th point on the Tree of Life. This point is not always depicted in the Kabbalah Tree of Life, but it is important to later European Kabbalists. It is called Da'ath in Hebrew, which means knowledge. It represents the divine light, which few persons can see. Thus it is usually not depicted. We'll seek that light of truth on Oak Island. My Masonic Tree of Life is composed of 4 Masonic symbols: the Christian cross, the Masonic compass and square, upward and downward pointing pyramids, and a circle enclosed within 2 parallel lines, 2 Masonic pillars. These 4 symbols combine to form a single Tree of Life shape the Scottish Rite Freemasons have been using since before 1713 to create a single symbolic map on the North American landscape. It is a message about the land of the free, a statement about the meaning of liberty. Before I get into that, let's apply this template to the Tree of Life on Oak Island. In the Seal of Liberty, I prove beyond all reasonable doubt that Oak Island is Masonic, Scottish Rite, and that its location was known before 1713. However, for real-world technical reasons, it is unlikely that the location was chosen before about 1650. So, Oak Island is Masonic. And if Freemasons buried anything of value on Oak Island, then there is only one place that they would bury it. Seek the truth, which is found through knowledge, which in Freemasonry is symbolized by gold or light. Follow the light. On page 841 of the Scottish Rite book Morals and Dogma, a few pages from the end of the book, then Grand Commander of the Scottish Rite Albert Pike writes, quote, "The compass of faith is above the square of reason, but both rest upon the Holy Scriptures and combine to form the blazing star of truth." End quote. Let's dissect this cryptic passage using the Masonic Tree of Life found on Oak Island. The compass of faith is above the square of reason, but both rest upon the Holy Scriptures, the cross, and combine to form the blazing star of truth. In Masonic symbolism, the blazing star sits atop the uncapped pyramid. The cap symbolizes that which was lost to humanity during the fall of man, and that which Freemasonry seeks. The eye is not looking at you as if it is the eye of God. Rather, you should be looking for the light. Seek here. From Masonic teachings, quote, "Masonry is the quest after something that has been lost," end quote. The cap symbolizes the pinnacle of Freemasonry, to achieve knowledge of the truth, which in Freemasonry is called light. Quote, "Advance toward the light, toward that star blazing in the distance, which is an emblem of the divine truth given by God and preserved amid the traditions and teachings of Masonry. Da'ath, the knowledge point, represents that divine light." Quote, "It is our duty always to press forward, for though absolute truth is unattainable, the amount of error in our views is capable of progressive decrease, and thus Masonry is a continual struggle toward the light." End quote. There is only one place that a Scottish Rite Freemason would put their treasure: at the knowledge point, the source of divine light, the summit of the pyramid that connects the earthly with the divine, the place where your eye of reason should look for Freemasonry's treasure. Quote, "Whenever you depart from the center of the square and the compass, you will no longer be able to work with success." End quote. The knowledge point is the center of the compass and the square on the Masonic Tree of Life. This is not a coincidence. These are the coordinates on Oak Island at which a Scottish Rite Freemason would encourage others to seek its treasure. Seek the divine light at the knowledge point. If a treasure is buried on Oak Island, how deeply would it be buried? 3 Masonic numbers are reasonable guesses: 33, 66, and 147 feet. But if I had to make a decision, I would choose 8 times 5, 40 feet below. Next I will introduce some, but not all of the facts that prove, beyond all reasonable doubt, that Oak Island is part of a Scottish Rite Freemason plan, and that the origins of that plan predate 1713. A more thorough investigation of this quest is detailed in the book The Seal of Liberty, America's Quest for the Lost Treasure of Freemasonry. The purpose and methods of Freemasonry are not what you've been told. It's a clever plan that aims to deliver an important message. Oak Island and the Newport Tower were devised and built by Scottish Rite Freemasons. The exacting details of their plan were known to them before 1713. It cannot be any other way. All maps that follow were generated using Mathematica version 10. The center column, the pillar symbolizing balance on Nolan's cross in the Oak Island Tree of Life, points directly at the Newport Tower in Washington, D.C. If you attempt to verify this fact using Google Earth, you will fail. You cannot use modern mapping techniques reliant on satellites in the computer age to uncover a map designed several hundred years ago. This is why I used Mathematica, because it allowed me to use the mapping tools of the age that I was investigating. See Chapter 2 of The Seal of Liberty, called The Path, to learn about this mapping issue. I devote an appendix in The Seal of Liberty to teaching the reader how to use Mathematica to verify my calculations and reproduce my graphics. The Masonic narrative begins on Oak Island. When the money pit was first discovered, the original seekers found at a depth of about 2 feet a floor of flat stones. These stones represent a threshing floor, which is used to eliminate impurities from wheat. Symbolically, the seekers were told that only the worthy will find the treasure that they seek. The seekers then continued to dig. They found a platform of oak logs every 10 feet that they dug for a total of 9 levels. Some researchers dispute the accuracy of this claim, that 9 levels were found. Its truth is irrelevant. Freemasons have helped shape the narrative of Oak Island since its beginning. They want us to conclude that Oak Island represents the 9 levels of hell in Dante's Inferno. Dante was a follower of the mystery religions that predate Freemasonry. His Inferno is a journey to recognize our sinful nature and to reject it, therefore seeking the divine light. The money pit symbolizes this journey. Greedy treasure hunters are endlessly tormented in the Inferno. Once we pass through the threshing floor and ascend through the 9 levels of hell, we realize that we are an imperfect being, an uncapped pyramid, an unfinished temple. We then follow the center column of the Tree of Life, the balanced path from Oak Island to the Newport Tower. The Newport Tower symbolizes Freemasonry's unfinished temple. It was deliberately placed in this bare state to encourage seekers to realize that they are an unfinished temple of God needing to be rebuilt. But to be rebuilt, one's current nature first must die, and they must be born anew. On the winter solstice, the day of the year symbolizing death, when the day sees the least light for the year, the sun sets on who you were, on your imperfect self. If someone at the Newport Tower follows the bearing of the sun at sunset on the winter solstice, then they begin their rebirth. Every day after the winter solstice, the days grow longer, more light each day, a symbol of an infant growing from birth. Follow the light, follow the sun. The sunset azimuth on the winter solstice at the Newport Tower points at the George Washington Masonic Memorial in Alexandria, Virginia. This memorial is modeled after the lighthouse at Alexandria, Egypt, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, a beacon of light. Atop the George Washington Masonic Memorial is a pyramid modeled after the mausoleum at Halicarnassus, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Capping the pyramid is a beacon of light. I devote a chapter in the Seal of Liberty to the use of this pyramid structure in American skyscrapers, most of them in New York City. I am not interested in any use of this style, as any architect can use it. I found its use by 2 Masonic architects of particular interest, as their buildings tended to be aligned with one another and sit on streets and addresses that were variations on the number 33. My theory was so predictive that I observed a building in Cincinnati while watching a baseball game, knew that it had to be related, looked it up only to learn that its architect was one of the Masonic architects that helped implement a Masonic pattern in New York City. Now let's return to our map. I detail in the Seal of Liberty a number of landscape alignments on the grounds of the George Washington Masonic Memorial that match the Oak Island Tree of Life dimensions. They are numerous enough and symbolically consistent enough to suggest that these grounds were designed with knowledge of the Tree of Life template. For now, note that Cedar Street terminates at the memorial grounds. Cedar and other evergreens like acacia are Freemasonry's symbol of immortality. Cedar is a key theme as we move forward. We arrived at the George Washington Masonic Memorial by following sunset on the winter solstice at the Newport Tower. The sunset azimuth on the summer solstice at the George Washington Masonic Memorial points through Washington Square in Sandusky, Ohio. In 1816, the master mason of what would become Sandusky designed its streets to reflect the Masonic Square and compass. Nearby Cedar Point is due west of the Newport Tower, as shown, so when the sun rises on the equinoxes at Cedar Point, Ohio, it does so over the Newport Tower. Other geographic features in Sandusky indicate its place within a Scottish Rite plan. The streets of Sandusky are oriented along a 66-degree azimuth relative to north. Here's what we have so far. The Oak Island Tree of Life center column points through the Newport Tower in Washington, D.C. The winter solstice sunset azimuth at the Newport Tower points through the lawn of the George Washington Masonic Memorial. Cedar Street ends at the memorial grounds. The summer solstice sunset azimuth at the George Washington Masonic Memorial points to Washington Square in Sandusky, Ohio. The streets of Sandusky were designed to form a Masonic square and compass. Washington Street in Sandusky points at 66 degrees relative to north. Old Beach Road in Newport heads east from the Newport Tower, also at 66 degrees. If we are standing at the George Washington Masonic Memorial on the summer solstice, then the sun rises over the Newport Tower and sets over Sandusky and Cedar Point, Ohio. So what lies beneath the sun at midday, high noon? If one heads due south from the George Washington Masonic Memorial, the direction of the sun at high noon, then they will reach the ocean at a beach town called Cedar Point, North Carolina. Cedar Point was established in 1713. It serves as the apex of the shape that we are creating. This diagram is the Chalice, with the George Washington Masonic Memorial at its center. It represents the cycle of life. If one is standing at the George Washington Masonic Memorial on the summer solstice, then the sun rises over the Newport Tower, birth. It reaches high noon over Cedar Point, North Carolina, maturity, and it sets over Cedar Point, Ohio, death. It then rises again over the Newport Tower, rebirth. Drinking from the Grail cup, the chalice gives one immortality. The dates of each location are shown. Read the Seal of Liberty to learn why the GW Masonic Memorial is labeled 1749. It will become more apparent to the viewer with time that this plan could only have been constructed after its entire form was known. It could not have been conceived in parts, as the alignments are too numerous and too precise. Therefore, since the apex was cemented in 1713, the entire plan had to be known by that time, likely a few decades earlier. It's okay if you're not yet convinced that we are looking at a deliberate plan and not merely a set of coincidences. Be patient, this gets weirder. But before I show you the bigger picture, I need to add two more details. The George Washington Masonic Memorial and its grounds are aligned with King Street in Alexandria along a 279-degree azimuth. If King Street did not turn northward at the memorial grounds, then it would pass through the center of the memorial. If one is standing in front of the memorial and facing its front door, then they would be facing 279 degrees. If they turned clockwise, 66 degrees, then they would be facing the same direction as the Alexandria War Dead Monument across the street. This is an important monument, as described in the Seal of Liberty. If they turned clockwise another 66 degrees, then they would be facing 51 degrees relative to north. If they traveled along that 51-degree bearing for more than 200 miles, then they would collide with the Statue of Liberty. If they passed through the Statue of Liberty, then they would collide with an obelisk in Lower Manhattan called the Emmett Obelisk. The George Washington Masonic Memorial, the Statue of Liberty, and the Emmett Obelisk are all aligned along a 51-degree axis relative to north. Liberty Island, like the Oak Island Tree of Life, is 1,152 feet long and 720 feet wide. If the knowledge point is placed on the Liberty Island flagpole, and the center column of the Tree of Life is oriented at 147 degrees, then point 9, the so-called Queen Point, sits beneath Lady Liberty. Recall that 4 segments of the Tree of Life template are 147 feet long. Note in the picture that 147 degrees is 33 degrees east of south. Also note that Liberty Island is 14.7 acres in size. These numbers, along with some symbolism from Masonic literature, positively identifies whom Lady Liberty represents. See the book, The Seal of Liberty, for these details. So, the George Washington Masonic Memorial Grounds were designed to match the Oak Island Tree of Life template, as was Liberty Island, which bears 147 degrees. The Emmett Obelisk in Manhattan is also part of a Tree of Life. It is oriented at 33 degrees, which is the direction of Broadway Street in this part of Manhattan. This means that we have 3 trees of life that are all aligned along a 51-degree axis. One of these trees of life is 33 degrees east of north, and another is 33 degrees east of south. With that in mind, let's return to the larger map. The bearing from Cedar Point, Ohio to Cedar Point, North Carolina is 147 degrees. The bearing from the Liberty Island flagpole to Lady Liberty is also 147 degrees. There are 4 lengths on the Oak Island Tree of Life of length 147 feet. The numbers 147 all differ by 3, which conceals 33 in the number 147. 147 degrees is 33 degrees east of south. If you still think that all of this is just a coincidence, consider this next measurement. The bearing from Cedar Point, North Carolina to the Newport Tower is 33.6 degrees. This is a near match with the Tree of Life at the Emmett Obelisk, which bears 33 degrees, as does Broadway Street in this part of Manhattan. It is also a mirror image of the line from Cedar Point, Ohio to Cedar Point, North Carolina. But why the 0.6 degree error? I estimate that persons in the late 1600s could achieve an accuracy of about a half degree. Take a look at a grade school protractor to understand why. So anything beyond 0.5 degrees is sloppy, even without GPS and satellite mapping. Perhaps our triangle has a different point than the Newport Tower. The other 2 points are called Cedar Point. What happens if we look along a 33 degree bearing rather than a 33.6 degree bearing? What do we find? We find what else but Cedar Point, Rhode Island. Like Cedar Point, Ohio, Cedar Point, Rhode Island is a small north-pointed peninsula. Cedar Point, Rhode Island bears 33.09 degrees from Cedar Point, North Carolina. But how do we know that this is not merely a naming and geographic coincidence? The Oak Island Tree of Life center column pointed at the Newport Tower. This was the alignment that began our journey. The Oak Island Tree of Life said, "Go this way." So we cannot alter our theory mid-investigation. So where does Cedar Point, Rhode Island sit along that line? The line from the Oak Island Tree of Life passes through the Newport Tower and Cedar Point, Rhode Island, and then later through Washington, D.C. This third Cedar Point gives us a single inverted triangle, feminine, with cedar points at each corner, and the life cycle of the sun in the middle. There is another Cedar Point along this line. Read the Seal of Liberty to learn where. If you still think that all of this is just a coincidence, consider that Oak Island bears exactly 45 degrees from Cedar Point, North Carolina, our apex. This means that this path is half of a Masonic square. What I have presented here are merely statements of fact, no speculation. These alignments are numerous and precise, and they match Scottish Rite symbolism, and I've only shown you part of the picture. We have an inverted triangle of cedar points. They represent immortality, the quest for a permanent land of liberty. It rests on a Masonic square, the square of reason. Many additional details are revealed in the Seal of Liberty, and their purpose is explained. I have not shown you the weirdest parts. To understand them, one needs all of the building blocks, and I do not have the space in this video. Why would Scottish Rite Freemasons long ago devise this plan? Why have Scottish Rite Freemasons continued to add to this map as recently as 1943? Why is Freemasonry always associated with treasure quests such as the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, and Templar gold? Why do some accuse Freemasons of pagan or even Satan worship? Why was Freemasonry created in the first place? Freemasonry calls itself a science for a reason. Find these answers as you dig for your own treasure in The Seal of Liberty, America's Quest for the Lost Treasure of Freemasonry by Adam Schneider.